Imagine my shock when I saw a video the other day and this white lady was saying that colonialism was good to the people that it happened to. I paused and said, hold on, let's actually debunk that, because I do think that people out there who think that when the white people came to take whatever it is that Africans had, they actually brought good things. They gave them education, they gave them good roads. So Africans should actually be grateful. So as a grateful African, let's talk. Hi there, my name is Janita Maaya. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, do subscribe, take a minute. Excuse me while I thank, this is my speech. Thank you so much to our colonizers for giving us roads, giving us sanitation. What else did she say? Oh, she said education, sanitation, and transportation. I mean, where would we as Africans be if the white people didn't come and, put up a road? Now, let's debunk that. I hate this thinking that before they came, people were not leaving. Were they not leaving? Were they dying? Now, granted, death is part of life, It's like, are you trying to tell me that there was no way for them to get from point A to point B? Now, it may not have been like the colonizers, but it got them from point A to point B. So for them to totally dismiss the other people that were there before they got there, it sounds so crazy. It's the same thing. I'll use my country as an example. It's the same thing with naming certain places. I saw a bill that went into play about them changing names, but I'm not seeing them changing names. So KCCA, pull up your socks. Prince Drive needs to go, okay? Prince Charles Drive, anyway. We have a lake, actually, a lake called Lake Victoria. If I remember my history right, in 1858, John Huntington Speke and his partner Richard Burton discovered the lake. They went to visit the lake. They were the first Europeans to visit the lake. So Speke decided to name it after Queen Victoria and then named it Lake Victoria. Now, this lake already had its name. It had its local name that Ugandans were calling. But when the colonizer came, they decided that they had to call it a different name to honor their queen. Now, mind you, Ugandans were calling this lake Lake Nalubale. Like, it had a name, Lake Nalubale. But when the colonizers came, they decided to name it another thing. And to give you guys also some sort of like historical context, when this lady says, oh, but we brought nice things, we brought roads, we brought transport, I want to talk about that road bit. I want you to know that every infrastructure that was created when the colonizers came, it was created to benefit them. They didn't create it thinking this is going to help the people, the natives that we found there. No, they created whatever it is that they created to help themselves. I'll talk about the railway from Tanzania, from Dar es Salaam, going through all the way from Dar es Salaam, from the coast, let me just say, from the coast to Uganda, going through all the way to Kasese, to the copper mines. Now, they came and they constructed that railway. They actually used Indians. They were calling them coolies at that time. That was the man labor. Actually, I remember a whole question in my history class saying, what are the challenges that the Indian coolies faced? And we used to think it was a simple question because obviously we're thinking these are Indians doing all this hard work. Obviously, the first thing they're going to encounter is the wildlife was eating them up left, right, and center. But my thing is, all this was being constructed to benefit them because they came here, they saw that these countries had the raw materials and the resources that they needed to better themselves and become better than their counterparts, than the other countries that they were at war to, There was a whole, is it called like a industrialization taking place, and they needed the raw materials. And guess what? They decided to provide the transportation so they can get those raw materials. Not once did they say, let's do this so that we can benefit the people. So people like her who think the colonizers brought us transportation, I want her to think, when they brought the transportation, was it to benefit us or them? It was definitely to benefit them. So let's not get it twisted. And the bit about education, when she says, oh, they brought education. Now, I want to tell you guys that before the colonizers came, there was obviously a traditional way of teaching people certain things. There was a traditional way of learning. For the longest time, I do know that being an apprentice, like learning after someone, in a trade, that was ongoing, that was happening. Like people were teaching the others how to do certain things, how to learn certain skills so they can better themselves. That was happening. It was not in a school system, let's say with a curriculum, or with you're doing term 1 and term 2 and term 3. There was not that. It was like a hands-on type of education that was happening. And for the longest time, we also know that we're also using proverbs as a sort of education. We had a song as kids. It was Bagambire Bagambire Terere. It's let me tell you then Terere. It was just like you bring up a proverb and there was a meaning to a proverb. And that's how people learned, because old people had experienced certain things, then they came up with these proverbs that the young people could learn from their experiences. That was also a form of learning. Just because people didn't sit in a classroom and use the chalkboards and the white chalk and then use blackboards and then the chalk and then have a whole term 1, term 2, term 3, go on a lunch break, done with school. Just because there was no system like that doesn't mean there was no education. And that's something that most people want to forget. Like, just because you didn't find a way of doing certain things like how you used to doesn't mean they were not there. You understand? And before I leave, I want to mention that most times, even when they brought their education, they didn't bring their education to teach people how to be leaders. They brought their education to teach people how to be clerks. That's a word. That's a word right there. Because they did not bring their education to better anyone's life. No, they brought their education so that they can get more workers to work for them. That's why they brought their education.
We now have a generation that believes everything we did by colonizing. Yes, it is true. They think everything about colonization was wrong. It wasn't. There were some terrible things and there were some good things to come out of it. And that is about properly acknowledging your past.
Education.
Yes, completely.
Sanitation.
Transportation.
Yeah. There was so much that we brought to communities.
And before I leave, I want to mention that most times, even when they brought their education, they didn't bring their education to teach people how to be leaders. They brought their education to teach people how to be clerks. That's a word. That's a word right there. Because they did not bring their education to better anyone's life. No, they brought their education so that they can get more workers to work for them. That's why they brought their education.
But that is... But you see, you're typical of what we're talking about.
No, I'm saying that colonization, the empire was wrong. It was wrong, full stop. That's, the things that Britain might have done.
But that's very much through your modern sensibilities,
Yes.
you might say that, because we wouldn't now routinely go into other countries.
It was a profoundly racist set of basically invasions of other people, where we subjugated people to our rule and sort of made them work for us. It was completely
made their countries work.
But imagine yourself in the shoes of a 13-year-old boy hearing you say that.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
What do they then... How do they then carry that through life?
Well,
Why did she have to bring up a 13-year-old? I think she was trying to insinuate that if a 13-year-old heard you right now, they would think they're racist. If your forefathers were racist, they were racist. What's the discourse? If your parents were racist, then they were racist. You can't erase that. If they went and colonized and took over a certain place, then they were racist. I don't get it. So the young boy hears about that. I hope he wants to learn his history and understand that what they did was wrong, and understand that I can do better, and understand that this is what my ancestors were doing in their free time. They were invading these places. They were taking over. They were creating division. There was a whole scramble for Africa to see who could get a piece of what and which piece came with what resources. So yeah, let the 13-year-old hear what he has to say. Let him hear that they were racist. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of invasion. A lot of bad things happened during colonization. Colonization internalized being inferior or feeling inferior. So many people who went through colonization, I don't think they just woke up and said, I am a great leader. No, they thought, I can grow up to serve this person and then I'll be lucky me. If I can get to serve this person, then I would be so lucky. They took land. They displaced people. Like, what is not clicking about this? What isn't? This lady talks about there were benefits. There were benefits to it. Like, we should be so grateful that colonization came with some benefits, and you don't see that they gave you a cute little road, and you don't see that they brought all this infrastructure, and you are so ungrateful. That is what it's looking like. And I just want to say, are you crazy? Okay, is it the devil's advocate? Oh, God forbid. Blood of Jesus. We won't go there. But like, let me be the bad guy and say, okay, they brought all these nice things and we should be so grateful for all these nice things. But the reality is that they left behind so much. We all know that the wealth of Britain grew massively during colonization, obviously at the expense of these colonized states that they had, giving them all these resources, giving them all this manpower, introducing slavery at that, all that made them grow as a country. And then what did that leave the African countries that they colonized? It left them in famine. There was famine that happened. It left them with poor infrastructure at that, because I'm seeing here that African countries were left undeveloped, and there was no connection between the rural to the urban areas, which they created, because before there was no rural, there was no urban. It was just a place. But when they came in and brought all this division, what did they leave the people with? They left them with nothing. So what benefits? Like, come on, you're killing me here. What benefits?
They just didn't live like Britain did. It doesn't make it worse. It just makes it different.
So it's okay to live without education, and it's okay to live without a transportation system, is it?
They did have education. It just wasn't our education system. They had language. It wasn't our language.
This cultural
medicine we brought to
precisely what we have.
Yes.
As we wrap this up, he said they didn't have language, they didn't have education. Is it okay for someone not to go to school? Is it okay for someone not to be educated? Speaking of languages, when we were colonized by the British, they introduced this thing where you had to speak English, and it was a must for you to speak English. Now, mind you, so many Ugandans or so many Africans can speak so many languages at once, right? So in schools, when you were caught speaking a local language, did you know that you were given a sack to shame you as the non-English speaking person? Did you know that you were laughed at for speaking vernacular in school? I remember we used to have a whole assembly. Then after assembly, they would read vernacular speakers for that day. People were being punished for speaking their native language. People were being punished because they were not speaking the colonizers' language. Do you know how crazy that sounds? But that is the norm. That some people are still colonized. The education system is a bit sketchy here and there. We won't get into that, But for her to insinuate that there was no language before, that's what I'm saying. Like, do you think they were just wild animals running around? There was a system in place. It wasn't your system, but there was a system. And that's something that we all need to get with. There was something in place. Just because it's not your something doesn't mean it wasn't a something. Oh, I hope I've made sense. But yeah, guys, we've come to the end of this one. Let me know what you think in the comment section. If you want more videos like this, you can just let me know. You can also send me an email at joannamaya@gmail.com. Check out my website, joannitamaya.com. Just search for that. You will find me right there. And comment below. Let me hear what you have to say. Support the channel. Buy the merch. Super chart. Do all the nice things, okay? And I guess I'll see you next time. If I've missed something, subscribe, like, comment, all the nice things. And I'll see you next time. Bye.